So recently, Zopa and I think one other person, I think it was Venerable Trini, was talking about antidotes and then the force of antidotes. And I was thinking about that a little bit, and also thinking about how I think that's quite true and even helpful in the moment to realize when things are, when you're trying to kind of turn your mind around, that you need to put some determination into it. And I was also thinking how important it was to have the right antidote. Because sometimes, depending on what's going on, like if you're kind of wound up, and then you need to kind of subdue the mind then. And if you're kind of like low, you need to bring the mind up. And so sometimes I use the wind you up while I'm already wound up. That's not an antidote then. So, it's kind of trying to find this little steady state of the mind. A friend of mine wrote a song about balance and being in balance, and how you're always just kind of falling from one step to the next, which is kind of the case. You're always kind of in motion, and it feels like the kind of internal balance is like that. And I think that one of the things that I find most helpful, because really when things are going on, what you need to do, the antidote is exactly the opposite of what you're doing and what you want to do. So that's quite a challenge. I find that challenging, because I know now what the antidotes are sometimes, and it's hard to make the mind want to do it, which is so strange to have that resistance. And I find that that resistance actually kind of discouraging, to tell you the truth. My mind will, when I see that I'm having a lot of resistance, eventually I'll probably get to some level of discouragement. And I think that's where I try to keep in mind what His Holiness said, which is that, really these kind of situations that we have, and I especially think of this with anger, is I try to really, when I'm getting more the upper hand, I really try to see the opportunity that it presents. And that's really hard to see when I'm in it. But he talks about the times in his life where he's really learned the most and grown the most have been the difficult and challenging times. And that it brings a kind of strength. And the really only way you can kind of go wrong is to become discouraged, because then you are defeated. And and I know that mind, and it never works, and it's good to minimize any amount of intensity or time that you spend there, because it doesn't really help. And so I think that trying to find the advantages of having these situations and mental states come up that we don't like is helpful for my mind to see that, try to turn them into like an opportunity. And especially with things like anger, in order to really almost do anything, you need to develop a certain level of tolerance and patience. Just to develop most of the skills that we've all learned. You sometimes meet people who can't kind of apply themselves to things because they get frustrated and give up. And most of the things that we learn how to do, we have to kind of do repeatedly. Even just learning how to ride a bicycle, or there's just so many things. Most of the things in life we've had to do repeatedly to gain any skill at. And so this is also the case with languages, with the Dharma, with working with our afflictions. And so just kind of putting it in that light, that this is another one of these opportunities, and then keeping it all kind of light and in perspective, I think is quite helpful. And when I say that, I mean the mind of discouragement is also, I think, a mind that's quite heavy. And the heaviness is this really strong feeling of I, kind of like a sinking to the bottom of the ocean I. And that one is going to stay down there at the bottom of the ocean. You need to kind of get it a little lighter, a little less solid, maybe floating like a cork on the top of the ocean rather than this piece of metal that's just like an anchor that's stuck. So I think this is where, you know, for Venerable Chodron says that I always find helpful at some point when I'm working with anger is who's angry? And just try to find that person. Who's that person that then gets discouraged? Who? And you can look all over the place and you can never find them. You can check your body, every single part. You can check all your mental states. Just go through them, your memories, your dreams, your eye consciousness, you who's like, you know, hearing this talk, having a reaction to it, any of that. You can go through all your mental states and you cannot find that angry person. You cannot find the discouraged person. And that always is, if nothing else, it will make you laugh.